Okay, here's our next subscriber project, building the big job. Now unfortunately we got a battery light just started flashing in this hot weather. Many times that means we got about less than a minute to shoot. We're going to see how long, and the other battery's in the car on the cigarette lighter charger. So I hope we don't lose too much of the flight. Charlie Reeves with the big job.
watching how a pro does it.
It's a good flying plane. I love the way this plane flies. This is what I'm building next year for VSC.
Really?
I'm building, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to join the Charlie Reeves fan club or the Keith Trussell fan club, whoever. I don't know who's the fan club belongs to.
Eddie Nacarado.
Eddie Nacarado, yeah.
Me up, done for the day, and
Amateur hour's over, huh? The pros have taken over the contest, huh? Well, my battery light's lasting a whole old-time stunt flight. When a light comes on, usually you only got a minute or so, but is it better or worse in hot weather? What happens to batteries? They go bad when it's cold, not hot, right?
Well,
You're a battery man.
They'll go bad when they hot. You have to cool them off before you can charge them. And
Look at this nice landing.
When they hot.
Look how this thing lands in grass.
Oh yeah. And then
Oh my God.
And then when you put them in the charger, take them out, let it sit for a while to cool off, then put it in the camera.
Charlie, you better get those plans to me in a hurry.
Yeah, all right, that's how a pro does it, huh?
Oh, this is predestined. I believe in these things. When you started the motor, the battery light came on, which never goes more than a minute. It went to the end of your flight. God is saying,
Nice job. Thank you, Daryl.
I hear God saying, build a big job, Windy. Charlie Reeves will respect you.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe not that part. Maybe not the whole thing. That flies good, man. Now I'm even more psyched than I was before. That thing flies really good.
I like it, man. It's the Eddie May Club. Yeah.
The top 20.
No, I know. That was the beginning of war. Some part of the beginning, part of it was at Brodex with Keith. Part of it was, it's just good to look back at this footage, boy. And that's where our big job project started, so let's go work on it. Talk is cheap, videos are cute. Let's go work on a big job. Oh man, just another gloomy day. I was hoping today would be a little sunnier for the obvious reasons, but you know what? It'll give us a good day to get some shop work done. Not a great day. Now starting off the day, we got this from Mike Estella today. It's the Blue Train in Africa. Now I had seen a video about this. I haven't seen this little clip yet. But you know what? We're coming up on a part of the season where both Mike and myself like to go to some model railroad shows, get together with Arnie and run trains and eat pizzas. Now they had a documentary about this on TV, but there's some really nice still shots here. As we get into the train season, our soldiers are under construction. We're not sure what we're going to do about decorating the house this year, but I'm sure Karen had, look at the length of this train. I'm sure Karen has something very special planned. And I don't know what it is. Cold weather and trains just seem to go hand in hand, and today it's really getting cold out there. Look at some of the photography on this now, because I've just been getting a little interested in photography. That's pretty nice. Whoa, look at this. Could have had to cut out the earth there. Oh my God, it's beautiful. Beautiful photography, even if you don't like trains. And there's some pretty nice luxury stuff. That's nicer than the bathroom in my house. Holy mackerel. Clawfoot tubs on a train. Anyway, from Mike Estella, and Mike, of course, not only is a very accomplished modeler and has been, among other things, the president of the Circle Burners, and we've gone to many, many train shows together, and we've enjoyed running trains together, and we have had, this time of year is the time of year, I don't know myself too, usually in the summer I'm up in the train room once a month or whatever, but as soon as it gets cold, the coffee always tastes better up in that train room in cold weather. Anyway, that was from Mike Estella today. Thank you, Mike. Get a good start to the day. And we got this from Charles Mackey today. The only problem is I haven't been able to access it on my computer, and I'm not sure why. Needless to say, it's a Vulcan, and I'm sure it's some kind of picture show, but the problem is, well, I guess we don't have all the options on this. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Maybe I'll get Karen and try to figure out how we can open that up. That came in from Charles Mackey today. And this is from our friend Lee Concannon. And he's been extremely, I don't want to read his note on the video, but something I've always been a big proponent of is never build more than one plane at a time. Build one, finish it, fly it, trim it before you start another project. Well, he said he started this project many years ago and he just finished it now, so it's, I don't know how many years, but I guess from watching Windy videos over the years, maybe he's seen me confess to anytime I've ever started more than one project at once, at some point in time, it becomes a mistake. And it's always something that later on, I wish I didn't start the second project. Now, Mike Estella and I, of all things, over the years have gone over that many times. And Mike is as guilty as I am of starting. You go down his house and there's 3 or 4 planes under construction, and as I have done in the past, and then you never finish any of them. That's the problem. But anyway, he sent us this. The coffee's nice and warm. Oh boy, on a day like today, does that coffee taste? It just tastes so much better on a cool day. And hey, nice car, by the way. And speaking of that, tomorrow, is it tomorrow? I'm not even sure. Very soon, Karen gets her new Volkswagen Jetta, and she's the happiest person on the planet right now. All right, so we had a good start to the morning. I love those train things too. Photography. You can imagine how many, in this day and age, how many digital shots he took to pull out those 20 or 30 pictures. Anyway, I want to get started. First part of this is going to be, and I don't need the engine and the crutch, I now have dedicated bolts for this project that when they're tight, they don't stick out the top. I've made sure I got a drop of oil in each one of the blind nuts, so no matter how I work on it, I don't wind up, when I'm all done, having a blind nut I have to replace. And all of that, that's just cheap insurance. I'm always very aware of a few things. Number one, later on in the build, you wind up putting longer bolts in and you have the top block all carved or whatever, and the bolt will come up or put a dimple in the finish or something.
That's happened to me many times, of course. The way you get smart in this sport is you screw things up. So there's almost a relationship to how smart you are and how many things you've screwed up. Something like that anyway. But anyway, the point is now, I'm at a watershed in this project. I need to figure out exactly, and I've got the curve going into the spinner perfect, which I'm very happy about. I have the back part of the mounts, and I've extended this so that I could catch, in essence, catch the bell crank mount. In fact, I didn't allow for that 3/8 ring that's got to go on there. But there's a really a big problem here that I didn't anticipate. Of course, I'm doing this one piece at a time, so I don't really have a way of figuring this out until it's over with. Now, a lot of things have gone in our favor. The motor looks like it's going to be a drop-in. The motor looks like it just couldn't be any better. I mean, we're going to be able to get exactly the cowl shape we want with the slightest maybe change to the plans. It may not even a 1/16 of an inch, which I don't think anybody's going to even care about, let alone I'm not going to care about it. But we'll get it as close as we can. That's one thing. But the next part of this, and in the last couple days between Karen buying this car and having other things going on around here, and making a couple of motorcycle parts off camera, what's happened is I need to make a decision now on this fuselage. Now, Rich Jacobone told me he had a big aluminum box for something and he was going to bring it over. I don't know if he's going to come over today or tomorrow, but that may change the whole way we look at the project. If I have an aluminum box the length of the fuselage, I may want to work around that box and then try to make that box look like a suitcase, glue material to it or something. Again, that's one choice, and there's a lot of choices here. That's just one of them. But what I wanted to do today, and maybe I'll do a little storyboard here, because from looking at the way this construction goes together, and if you did it exactly as it is here, and I think it'd work fine, but I'm always looking to try to make it just a little bit different or lighter or whatever. And the only way I can see that I could possibly make this lighter is by using the method that we made. Remember, we got to make up 3 ounces of hardware minimum, and it may be 4 by the time we're done. We probably got an ounce off of the gear layout and possibly a few grams off the crutch over a stock crutch. But some of this is going to come from behind the CG, where it's the further behind the CG it is, the more important it is. Because if we wind up with a model that's heavy at the back and we have to add 2 ounces of nose weight, we're right back where we started from. So in my mind, I've been thinking about how to do this. And I think the easiest way to do this that'll make the structure... Let me make a storyboard to show the way that I think this... that the best way this will go together for us, and it'll allow us a lot of choices somewhere down the road if we have to or want to split the body. But we'll build it in one piece and then cut it. I think that's going to be the only way. And boy, it's given me a lot of thought to try it, because I have never made a body that comes apart like that. This is going to be the first one if we have to do it, or if this box Rich is bringing over works. We'll just have to play this by ear. Now, it really doesn't matter what plane you build. You're always going to have, and this is always one of the dilemmas of building or designing, you always have the side view of the fuselage, and you have the thickness of the fuselage to deal with. Now, you can always make a fuselage more rigid, and where it needs to be rigid, and I think if you start at and just pretend it's the tail moment on this part of the fuselage, needs to be as rigid as practical. Now, in a profile, it's easy. You use a stiff piece of wood. On a built-up plane where you just have a shell, there's a lot of ways to make it more rigid, and in fact, some of them are shown on the plans. One of them is, if you take this back part of the fuselage, and in every dimension, we've done this with the Spitfire, of course, you make a ladder. And that's what's shown on the plans. Now that's definitely a good way, and that definitely will stiffen up the ship. But my concern is, It's not really a big deal. This is a small thing. It's really something I wanted to try. The way I envisioned doing this project was very much like we did the Testarossa. That we'd have the crutch end, and the crutch is going to end at some point. And we're going to have a pattern to make a balsa piece that we build a fuselage around. And then instead of using formers in the typical way, there's two ways you can make this a lot stiffer. Is just instead of making the formers out of and typically 3/32 or 1/8 inch, I'm not sure what would be the real way to do this the best. But what we've done in the past that's worked really well is space the formers an inch apart, but make them at a 1/16. And what happens is now you have a box, because once you glue the bottom on, and the grain on the formers is going side to side, what happens is this back structure, as thin as it is on a big job, and it's really like the big job relative to even a Nobler, is super thin in the back, and it's super thin in both dimensions. So I think if I lay out each fuselage side with where I can put those formers 1 inch apart, once I make the top, let's call it, look from the side, fuselage side, now I also have a center line going right down the fuselage to work off. If I have to split it, I can realign off the center line. Once I can put the bottom on this, what happens is now, and this is the significant strength gain, is you've completed the box. And it's the box that gives you the strength. So this is one choice and one way I've really thought about how I want to do this, because I'm going to put a lot of time into this fuselage. And possibly, the reality is, if we go with one of our systems, I'm going to have to cut it and put some bolts or bulkheads or something. So I just wanted everybody that's enjoying watching, hopefully enjoying watching this, to see what the logic is of trying to make this from the end of the wing back. Let's see if we sketch in the wing. From the end of the wing, actually the back end of the body. When this gets thin, now a Nobler benefits by having a lot of side area, so you have a bigger surface trying to twist. But if you've ever noticed a Nobler, the design calls for formers, and those formers go up into the turtle deck. Well, it's those formers. If you left out the top and bottom of the formers, you lose a lot of strength. So I'm thinking this might be the way to go. It's a little bit different than the plans show, but certainly the outside shell will be exactly the same. But I need to start figuring a couple of things out. I need to figure out the top shape of this, what'll be our top spine. I need to get that shape, and I'll do that by tracing half of it on a piece of paper and make a pattern that I'll flip it just like making an airfoil. Then I'll have a spine shape to work off. And once I have the spine shape, I can lay out where this is all going to go together on the fuselage side. So I need to go look through my wood and find some fuselage side wood. I need to lay out a fuselage side because I need to make a unique pattern that'll be for my fuselage side. Then I need to make that spine in a half piece, flip it, make a real piece on a real piece of balsa wood. And I need to make the doublers. And then what I'll wind up doing is, once I have most of that done, I can lay out where these formers, and I'm going to try to space them at 1 inch apart. See if, just for instance, this'll, well, again, we'll find out. If this is going to be, what I'm looking to do is save maybe 1/4 ounce, 1/2 ounce, but that 1/4 ounce is way behind the center of gravity. So, and if I do have to put that brake in with the bolts and all the hardware that goes along with that, that just adds one more thing to the mix that I would hopefully not have to deal with, but I want to have all the options when I'm finished with this fuselage. So the next thing is to go find some fuselage sides somewhere in that pile of wood we just got. Now, of the wood that we have in stock here, what I'm going to try to do is find some appropriate pieces. Sea grain, of course, would be choice one. Problem is, some of the sea grain we have is not really that straight. I may try to do a little job straightening it out if I have to, but let's see how much. I don't really need it to be real straight right now. I need to figure out a pattern. Now, if I go exactly off the plans, which is, I want to maintain that shape, and they're calling for a 1-inch top block, which we have a real nice top block in stock, so that's nice. We have the canopies ordered. They should be in, and we're going to try to dye them, get a nice canopy detail on this. But the first thing is to figure out where this gets thick. The thickest part of this is going to be around the wing. Oh, we're really under 3 inches, so what it's going to allow us to do maybe is get 2 fuselage sides out of one piece. We'll work, let's see. The thickest piece is right here. We're not even at 3 inches on the thickest piece, so that's really to our advantage. So I guess the first thing here to figure out is to get the length. And this will be relatively easy. We go up to the nose ring. The fuselage side does not go all the way to the front on this design. And we end the fuselage side right at where the stab ends. So now that we have that dimension, we can take everything 90 degrees off of that. And at the back, of course you could cut up the plans, but I don't want to do that. At the back of the fuselage we are, let's just see what the dimension is that we are, is 1.3 at the back, 1.3 and a half. That's going to be our back dimension. Then we need to know where does this go straight? How much of it? Where's the big ruler? As he loses everything. We need to know from the point forward. This is going to go forward, and I'm going off the fuselage side now. It's drawn in. It goes straight right up, and let's measure it. Let's make it easy. No point making this difficult. We got a perfectly straight for (17 inches were straight. So what we want to do is measure forward 17 inches. And I'm just trying to put the logic of how I would go about making a pattern. 17 inches is the part of the fuselage that's going to stay relatively straight anyway. And then we'll measure down at a 90-degree angle. And we can measure the thickness 17 inches forward. This will make it easy. And we're right here as far as thickness goes. 17 inches forward. That's our measure point. And according to plans, we are 2.5. So now what that allows us to do is sketch in that line for the fuselage side right there. Again, because we're just making a pattern up right now, it's really not a, just want to lay one piece out and see what we have going for us here. That's 17. Now I need to know how far forward this goes straight. And what they have is they have a little bit of a curve in there. So let's see how far down, how far it goes straight. Well, now what we'll do, we'll cheat the system a little bit. We'll measure off the front instead of the back. The front is going to be 1.6 No, wrong. Measuring off the wrong one. 1.5. And that's going to go back to the cowling brake line. Cowling brake line is 3.9 back. And at the 3.9 mark, we're same as in the front. So that's going to allow us a very easy point. That'll be our cal brake line. That'll be the brake point. So the cal line will be right there. Then we go down. Fuselage gets thicker at the cal brake line. It goes down to 2.6½. And how far down does it go? Straight. Now all we need to know, we can sketch that line in. Of course, if you don't want to go through this kind of thing, and I don't mind going through this because this is part of the fun of modeling, to me anyway. Buy 2 sets of plans and use one for paper dolls. And mine, I just don't see any reason to do that. So now, how far up before this starts to change shape? It's 2.6½. It goes up to the bell crank mount. We're straight to the bell crank mount. So we can go back on that. 6.3. And we know that that dimension now we have that dot sketched in, and now we just make the curve in between. And now we know in between there's a little bit of a curve. So that's the kind of thing I'm just going to leave the wood a little bit extra and put that curve in with a sanding block. I know that curve is going to come kind of like that, and that's part of the side view of the plane, is to have that curve in there. Okay, so what that does, that gives us the outside dimensions. Now I can kind of just overlay it and see if it looks like we're in the ballpark. But the next thing, it sure looks fine. It looks like the next thing we want to do on this, I want to sketch in where the wing, and I need to have a center line to work off here. And I'm 1.5 inches down off the fuselage top, so that's going to make that real simple. And I'll extend this way out past where the wing ends. And this will be my wing center line. And I want to put that in a different color pen. That's my wing center line. Now I need to know how far back the leading edge of the wing would be from the nose ring. That would calculate everything off of the back of that nose ring. That's 3/8. Okay, so we're up to the nose ring. We're 5.5. Now that sets the front of the wing in place. Now we know we have a pattern for this, which in essence should make it. Always why I like to have patterns for everything. And I've got to interpolate the 1/16 of an inch for the leading edge sheeting needs to go on there. So I would have to kind of fudge in where that's going to go, and then a 1/16 of an inch for the sheeting. Now this doesn't take into account the flaps, which I got to do a little bit of interpolation on this. But on this case, because it's a take-apart plane, a take-apart plane is not critical. We're just going to plug in pieces here. I'm just sketching this out for my own reference. Now, if this were not a take-apart plane, if this were a one-piece plane, the rules change, because we're going to have to make an accurate hole. I only need to know that I don't get this leading edge in the wrong place based on that's where the wing is actually, there's an actual space it's going to be and where the template is. And that 16th of it's 16th inch sheeting that's going to come but a little more than a 16th by the time you take into account the front. So that lays out my wing. I can just sketch this in. I know that's about where that's going to wind up going. Now, and I'm looking what else I have to figure out here. I've got the cowl cut out. I've got to allow for that. I can go get the cutting pad. I do not need to cut out the wing center. Right now, that's not a necessary thing. But what I do have to do, and it's going to have to be very accurate, is when I locate the holes, I need to locate those holes in the other fuselage side very accurately. Now, if I'm real careful, I can use this side of the wood. Now, this is a twisted piece of wood. It has a twist in it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to straighten it out. I don't really have to since it's only a pattern. But what this is going to do is just allow me in real time to lay out the parts for this, what would be a slightly modified version of the way the plans are drawn. It's not a radical change, but it's a change that's enough of a change that I wanted to have a full-size pattern in my possession before I commit to using up a good piece of wood. Of course, that always assumes that we have a good piece of wood, but that, of course, can change in a heartbeat. Anyway, the whole thing here is to cut this piece out. Now, if it were a one-piece plane, I'd need to cut that out, cut the wing out, and start. What it would do, too, it would make it very flimsy. Where that wing cutout should be, we'd be having a little bit of a problem anyway. The way this is going to be, I anticipate this will be relatively rigid. Now, it looks like we've got it pretty well exactly how I wanted to have it, of course. Got the bottom, the center line for the top. Of course, when we make the real parts, what we'll do is we'll work off a true center line and put a real center line down the middle, because this piece is just going to be our pattern, and act as a reference of how I can lay this out. Now I need to lay out where the push rod on this is going to go. That's the next step in this evolutionary process, is where do we put the push rod? Now, because we don't have flaps, this should be relatively easy. Now we can lay out what they have. They have a 3.5 inch bell crank, but because we're building this one piece, we won't need this piece in here. So that'll allow us, actually allow us to use a 4-inch bell crank, and I won't have to mess around making a bell crank. I can just lighten up one of mine. It's also going to give me a lot of options when it comes time to take the lead outs on and off, because I have two choices. I can make the lead outs just snap over the bolts, or if I want to, I can have just take the bolts on and off every time I want to take the lead outs out. So that's something for a future discussion. But what this is going to allow me to do, now I can lay out where the horn is, because I'll make the horn the size shown on the plans. But I think what I'm going to do is, rather than using a metal horn that's going to weigh a lot, I'll make one out of carbon fiber and 64th plywood. That'll be, well, it'll be significantly lighter, because again, this whole back end from the pilot back, this is the part of the plane that's got to be light. If we add some weight up here, nothing bad's going to happen. But boy, we really don't want to, under any conditions, back here have something we don't have to have. Now this is where it starts to get, where I really need to think this through. Normally on a flat plane, the push rod is going up and down, and I can calculate out where I need to have the formas. Well, this is a little bit different, because we're only going to be going up and down. And if I work off the plans to his dimension of 3/4, it would mean that when that horn is, let's just see how far up it would be. It would never be more than that. It would be We just need to figure out ½ inch would be the highest it would go. So what this does for us, it'll never go lower. That's that dimension that it's going to go in. So at some point in time, that push rod is going to be where that is. And as it swings forward, it's going to be at the same height. So what we need to do, and this is, I got to take into account the thickness of the arrow shaft. I can take another piece off of that. And this is a critical dimension to lay this out, because I want to have a trough, and it's the trough that I need to know where it's going to be. In its lowest position, it's going to be down there. In its lowest position, its highest position. So now I can actually make what'll be the pattern for that trough. And that's going to allow me to lay out the formas. Now it's this piece here, let me just get this, that needs to be void of formers. When I lay out formers, this dimension, I can lay this out ahead of time and I know exactly where that push rod is going to wind up going. So I can put formers on top of it, I can put formers underneath it, but I have to leave that has to be empty of formers. So that makes that. Now we've got that push rod void. We've got the 1/8 of an inch on the bottom, 1 inch block on the top that tapers to almost nothing. And it's a 1/4 inch tail. Make sure it is a 1/4 inch tail. 1/4 inch balsa tail. It's going to be set in. So I can work this right off the plans. And that's going to be, we need to, because this is not a really critical thing, I'm going to sketch this in off a center line. That piece gets cut off so that I can have a place to put the stab, and that's going to allow the top of that to really taper nicely, which is one of the features of the plane. Makes it very, very nice toward the back. Just like a ballerina has that very narrow, if you've ever built a ballerina, that very narrow back of the fuselage is a defining feature of the model. Okay, that gives us the dimension for the stab. That's real nice, that's good. Okay, we've got that. We've got that part, that nose ring allowed for, and we've allowed for that. Now I can lay out the next step to lay out the formas. Now there's a slight little change. When I measure off the plans, and I measure with I do everything in tenths with a machinist ruler, this is showing that the stab from the side view is 200 thousandths, and yet they're calling for a 1/4 inch tail. So I'm going to adjust my part to reflect the 1/4 inch wood. Now maybe what it is Charlie sanded his 1/4 inch tail down, airfoiled it or something, but we're off by a 50 thousandths there if I go off the plans. And I want to keep it, I don't want to have the tail higher or lower than what it's supposed to be. But it looks like, well, we'll figure it out. It's calling for a 1/4 inch stab, 1/4 inch, and it could be that they've just sanded it down some, but I have to take this into account now. So when I have the pattern, I either have to add 50 thousandths here so that I'm where the plan is. That's one possibility, and then sand the tail 50 thousandths, or somehow account for that, or whatever the next choice is going to be. I don't know what the next choice is going to be. We're certainly going to find out. Yeah, it's 50 thousandths because I made this a 1/4 inch. And then when I went and measured the plan, I saw it didn't line up, and I said, ooh, 50 thousandths, what's going on there? Because again, I'm really making some effort here to make this as authentic as possible based on center lines and nose rings, and it's not my design, so I don't want to be creative and say, well, let's do this or let's do that. This looks like, well, again, that's one of the things that I need to remember in the course of building the tail. Either thin it out or adjust that piece when I cut the actual fuse sides out of the wood. And again, I don't know the dilemma. There's a lot of choices here, but I wanted to lay this all out in full scale, and I wanted to lay out my formers before I went any further on this. Because once I have the formers laid out, then I know how my construction is going to go. I know exactly what the spine will look like from the side view. I can lay out the top view. Every part of this hinges on having a pattern of what the fuse sides are going to look like in their final form. And we're coming up on that right now. Now what I did, 1 inch apart, I laid out the formers. These are all the tentative spots where they could go, and when I actually make a fuselage side from this pattern, I'll have to transpose this out. But it doesn't take into account, I need to make this what I call the spine, and before I can make the spine and get the actual shape, I'm going to have to at least make up the plywood doublers. And once I have the doublers made, then I can lay out where these take-apart things are going to go. So doing this in a sequential manner and having this pattern is just very important to me. And in the end, I haven't destroyed the set of plans either. I can keep that in my plan library, of course. Now here's one of the things we need to allow for. That back piece that's going to ultimately have the take-apart feature, I want to have plywood go all the way back there, at least to start with. So I want to go to the back part of the wing, make sure we've covered that. We've gone plenty far back. I also want to measure out the center line on this, even though I'm not using the center line to line things up. I don't want to have it, and I'm 1 inch. I don't want to have a somewhere in this build that I don't have a reference point where center is and where the thrust line is. So that then becomes a critical line that we need to use. No, I'm wrong. I'm measuring down to the thrust line. Wrong line. See how easy it is? It's 1.5 inches. And that's going to be the wing center line. Now from that I can lay out the front part of this. We don't, until I glue these on, I can't really spot face these in. As long as I know where they are, that's all I need to know right now. So this will be the base part of our doubler. I need to cut 2 of these out, get them all evened up, get basically a match set. They're 16 plywood, and these will be ready to go. Okay, now here's where it gets a little bit, well, just the slightest bit tricky. We laid out the rib. We centered up where we're going to have our take-apart features. We need to reference in where the bell crank mount is going to be. I'm just trying to think of if I'm leaving out any step here, because the bell crank needs to rotate through the fuselage, so both sides of this need to have. Both sides of this are going to need to have some clearance issues. We need the clearance at least out to there. Okay, I don't see any reason that wouldn't work. And we need to take into account the push rod being on top, I guess it isn't really going to matter. Let's see if we can get this at the back. 2/10. All these little clearance issues, when we actually get down to brass tacks here, they may become a real problem. Because that bell crank has to rotate through its whole. You don't need to account for the push rod. It's not going to go outside the body. This will be fine. And what I always need to do is take into account the thickness of the bell crank plus a little bit more. And we can always, if we see we're coming up on an interference fit, we can take a little more off, but right now I'd like not to take any more than I have to off. And that would allow for that bell crank to rotate in and out of fine. Push rod's going to stay inside the fuselage, hopefully. And we haven't compromised because we'd like to leave as much of this wood around this as possible. Now the last thing is, we know where this is winding up. And we certainly can, because we want to have not the spine come into this. So what we should do, if we really wanted to do this the right way, we should connect the spine. Actually, to make this, the spine should connect up here. This would be a smart way to do it. Let the spine go down there, and that would be fine. Leave a little notch there. Let the spine connect in here, and that would let us get rid of some extra material that I don't think we're going to need. We do want to have some material around here, but back here we can make this a radius. This can be a radius, and then we can go down to the Dremel saw this all up. And that gives us pretty much what our final shape is. Now this part was not shown on the plans because of the way it was built. It was not engineered this way. We can leave the plywood here. That's not going to hurt anything. Because our wing doesn't, we're not going to have this thing of the wing going through here, so that'll add some rigidity. We also need to see if our crutch, our thrust line on this is on the bottom, so we got to see if that's going to work out. Again, we don't have the wing in a way, so that's another, or just one more thing. In fact, I ought to do it with, I ought to just see something here. I can measure it this way. That'll allow for this. We want that to be on center, and we actually could fudge in where this crutch is ultimately going to go, and it's going to go back to the bell crank bolt, which will add a little more strength to this. However, the problem is our bottom piece is going to be an interference for the bell crank. So we may as well, before we get too cute, I got to lay this out in full scale, because some of this, or one of these parts is going to have to get cut away, maybe, but I want to lay this out with the motor in place to make sure I'm not getting too cute. This is one of those things. You get too cute now, and then you gotta either grind all that wood away later when it's glued in place. Now, there's one thing I always see, because I'm not an educated person. I tend not to rely on formulas and equations and slide rules or whatever, or certainly not computers. I like to see things and feel things in real life. I like to do my seat of the pants engineering now. In changing the design of this fuselage, while trying to maintain exactly the same outside contours, same way if you had a built-up wing and you wanted to make it a foam wing, you want to keep the contour the same so that you keep the integrity of the design, but you also want to make it, in our case, I don't have a choice, I have to make it a take-apart plane. And so, at least for now, this presents, all of these problems are like dominoes. Once you say it's a take apart, you've got to figure that, which then makes that too heavy. You try to save the weight, but then that takes that up. So one thing leads to another. Now, because we don't have this finished yet, I wanted to have this in place. And we're referencing off of, this really does get complicated. And I want to be on center here. So what I need to do is I need to put in, see what's going to happen. Unlike what I just thought, it's a good thing I'm not working with millions of dollars worth of aluminum here or anything at Boeing. What I thought originally is our bottom piece was going to be in the way. Now, when I originally came up with this pseudo design, I had a couple of things in mind that I thought would be great. Well, a couple of them have worked out, but a couple of them haven't. And now just look at what's happened here right now up close, because these are things we need to address right now before I go any further. Now my original thought was, see, I wanted to have the wing mount. My motor mounts are going to go right, that wing mount, that aluminum tube, the Tom Morris thing is going to go right through the middle of that or near it. Back here, the back of these motor mounts, pretty good engineering, huh? Take some credit for this. That actually did work out pretty good. Maybe I can get that Engineer of the Year award here. Back here, that'll work out fine. And plus we'll have, what's ultimately going to happen is our spine is going to connect right up here. And our bottom sheeting, which will be cross grain, and I'll explain that at a future time, why that's important. Anytime you sheet the bottom of a fuselage, if you sheet it with the grain going this way, and I sheet it with the grain going side to side, yes, I have the joints. And yes, dressing the edge off is a little more of a problem. But the strength you gain from cross-graining it is enormous. Done that many times. I know that's factual. I don't need a slide rule to figure that out. But this looks like it just unbelievably good. This is going to work out just fine. And if I do have to grind a little bit of way back there for the push rod, so be it. But that's going to be, that piece up there is going to allow that aluminum tube to sit in with some good integrity. Bottom tube won't be a problem. And even if I need to clear a little bit of this material out at the very end for our bell crank attachment, that'll be fine. The rod is not going to be a problem. The mount will be on top and bottom of that. Haven't even started to lay out where the gear are going to mount on this. Not important right now. Does not have to be done right now. But what I do need to do is make sure I've allowed for that 3/8 balsa ring. And I want to have this integrity as much as I can get this to work out right now. And that's going to require a little bit of fudging around. Now I had to trim some off of the front here. I had made this oversized in the beginning so I could get an exact fit to the doubler. And I got this lined up at 90 degrees. Now I'm ready. This is ready to do the permanent layout on it. Actually, this part worked out pretty well. Now I want to get the rest of the holes trimmed off in here. And we got one final little decision we have to make. And it's a critical one before we can go on to the next step. So I wanted to have everything up in 3 dimensions. And once I have everything up in 3 dimensions, then it's going to allow me to do the final thing, which is the tank spacer. Now the next step on this is going to be tricky because I think I've miscalculated in one way here that I'm going to find out right away. I need the part that goes through the fuselage, which is this. And I need to, let me just make sure I'm not missing a boat here. This is the way they work it. Well, but the point is I want to drill these holes. That tube is going to have to go through. And I'm trying to just figure this out on my own here. Figure out how that's going to work out. Well, for right now, this is the way this is going to have to, like it or not, this is the way it's going to have to work. I need to get those holes drilled. 266, we have that drill. We're going to need to get some precision drills because I've got these spotted. Where's my pattern? Lucky me. I have the holes spotted, but I want to drill those with maybe a 16th drill first. I want to get those lined up. Then this doubler itself will be the pattern for the other doubler. So the easiest way to do this, without making it harder than it has to be, get some tape. Because if it moves even a little bit, it's going to be off. And I don't want it to be off. There's our points. And what I'll do, I'll go get a 1/16 drill. Because all I want to do at this point in time is spot these. I want to have a center. I wouldn't dare try to just drill this hole. If I don't spot this and have a center to work off, there's almost no chance I'm going to get this hole to come out right the way I want it. So now what that's done is given me a 16th spot in the exact spots that I want to be in. Because if these are not the same, one fuselage side will be up, down, twisted. Those tubes have to slide right in. That's one of the most important parts of this. Now this is one of the tools that, it's a Harbor Freight. It's a step drill. These are about $6 for a whole set of them. But what it allows me to do, it's going to allow me to get that hole real close to what I want in steps. It's not going to tend to go flying off. In fact, what I ought to do, it'll be easier for me with my blind eyes to just put a little bit of tape on here as a mark where I want this to go, how far down. And drilling precision holes in plywood is not the easiest thing in the world. So what I think we're going to do is drill these one size under and then make a tool. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do, is do these undersize and then just make a tool to get a precision fit. But the little step drill, I've used this a lot. It's handy. We need 327, we'll have 312, we'll have just a little bit on each side. I can dress it off. But that mimics this. And this part, what's different about this, again, every step of the way, we've got to kind of compromise this. Because what's going to happen, these parts, if you had fillets, the way this is designed to work, with fillets, wrong piece. The fillets, where's my... I got to get used to this. The fillets on this would go up against this aluminum piece, but in my case, I want that aluminum piece to be flush with the fuselage side. So just that little divot is going to stick out. So that means it's this diameter here that I'm concerned with, and all these precision cuts and fits will have to be done ahead of time and figure out how we're going to do this JB Weld thing. But right now it's that diameter, and I want that to wind up flush with the fuselage side, and it's 327. So the next step is going to be just go over to the drill press and see if this is going to cut the way I hope it is. Now what I did a couple of test little pieces just to see how far up I needed to get that hole before I actually cut the real piece. The idea being, if it's going to break a piece or chunk it or not make a nice neat cut, I want to know and I want to know how far up that green tape has to go into the step. So I'll just have a few thousandths, 10 thousandths to sand. I can make a little undersized dowel because I want that plug to fit right in nice and tight on the fuselage side. And the test will be, of course, if we get these holes exactly lined up, which would be very, very nice, by the way. And the best way I know of is just go very slow. Don't try to do the whole thing in one shot, because each hole lines up the next one. And my guess is it would be almost impossible to get a hole that clean. Well, we're going to find out. Let's not do any bragging yet. But the step drill is a really useful tool. I've used it in making a motorcycle parts because it's good for drilling composite and sheet metal especially. Or where it's really good is for drilling a hole in a tube. When you want to drill a hole in a tube, a nice neat hole. Now, of course, the trick is to use our spotter to spot the centers when we drill the both doublers. Now, but again, in looking at this and having another cup of coffee and thinking it through, I know I need to make a few little adjustments, as I always do along the way. And when I'm doing something that's this complex, there's always that. I forgot that one step. I consider that normal when we do get it to that level. But here's what happens is we've got the hole spotted from the original laid out part, and we've got nice neat holes cut in here that are just undersized to that aluminum part. And what I'm going to do is at the very last minute just get in there, make up a tool, and what I can do is just roll sandpaper around a smaller tube to just clean that out, just ever so little. But I can't do anything yet. This is now I have to go to the next step. And the way this worked out, I could almost, if I really wanted to, push that through, but I don't want to do it. I want it to be as close of a fit, because those three pegs are going to just lock in, and when we have the fuselage made and these pegs installed, we'll build a wing right in place. That's the plan anyway. Now another thing, because I haven't actually built one of these yet and I don't know, it very well could be that the aluminum can, and I'm trying to figure out how this would work, that I can make the holes in the fuselage the smaller size. See, I would have to do that. It gets a little too cute. I'm getting into that area of being too cute. But I was just thinking, that would be nice. But I don't really need to, because as long as those tubes, if I'm going to build a wing off the tubes and that aluminum, there's going to be no fillet on this. I can have the flat part of the tube right out at the end, and it'll be all JB welded in or in some other way confined. And just those pegs need to stick out. I really feel like maybe that's going to be, well, once I do one of these, see, this has taken an incredibly long amount of time just to figure out. But you know what? Anybody that does this, even if you watch these videos and you spend the time, I think you can pick this up real quickly. Just thinking here while I'm watching Derek at Brodax, this may be our next year's project. You never can tell. But this would be, there's no way I'm going to make this in one piece. I may have to ship this out in 10 pieces. But anyway, just things to think about while I'm having a good time here. Now, as always happens, it virtually always happens, is when I'm calculating out and figuring out whether it's designing a bomber or whether it's redesigning something that's already been designed. What I didn't calculate out exactly, but it's okay that I didn't. See what's happening? The hole is coming right in when I get this lined up, and I should show this up closer, of course. It won't be a big deal, but it's something that I'm sorry I really couldn't make any change. That's going across the hole. So what I'm going to do is trim this back and trim both sides, of course, because what's going to ultimately happen is I want to put JB Weld around there, and this part is just then going along for the ride. This is useless, but it'll be close enough to the motor mount that it's going to do this. This will make for a nice rigid mount, because don't forget those parts want to slide in and out. So the next step is just to trim this back. And I'll leave maybe 1/8 of an inch so I can get some JB Weld in there. But of all the things you have to calculate out, I'm just sorry that didn't work out exactly the way I wanted, but choice 2 is not that bad either. So rather than fool around with this, I ought to just go out and cut this, because I know in other words, it's going to be a lot easier to cut now. Then once the fuselage is built, it'll be really a pain in the neck getting down in there and dremeling that out and everything. Where right now, just to cut it, I know that'll give me plenty of clearance. Now this, actually, it's really there's a lot of things I've done here with overkill. Plus I haven't used this system yet. But well, doesn't that make you crazy, that sound? Oh my God, I'm not the dentist. Anyway, a little piece that, had this been a little bit different in design even, or if you were designing this on paper. Now, I know modelers that like to do all their designing on paper. I like to do it in 3 dimensions. And of course, it's all personal anyway, so as long as you get the model built. So that gives me the perfect spot to mount that. That'll be perfect. Now, what'll pay, and difficult to figure this out without having the part in my hand. They're calling for a bulkhead here, a plywood bulkhead. Well, we're not going to need a plywood bulkhead. And what this will allow us to do, but actually this may not work out too bad at all. What this is going to allow us to do, considering we have that clearance there, I'm going to bring the tank shim back this far. Because again, remember, we don't have the wing to deal with. The wing is not going to be here, so we can bring the tank back even through the point where that bulkhead is and get another 1/16 of an inch of fuel tank. But more on the fuel tank in a few minutes, because there's another fuel tank issue that I need to address right now. Now what I can do is, this will just give us a little bit bigger tank box. And I'm not sure we're going to need it, but what we are going to need to do is account for, we want to use our carbon fiber tank, of course. This will be fine. What I want to account for in this whole thing is I have to account for the thickness, because our fuel tank is a 1/16 of an inch thicker. So I'm going to, then at the tank that's called for here, so I'm going to thicken this up by putting on some shims on each side of the mount, so it'll spread the tank box just enough to allow us to use our tank, which is about 2 1/16 to 2 1/8. And so now we just need to trim this off. This makes for a little nicer, and it's going to give us just a little more room for a tank. Because even if you don't run into that bulkhead, eventually you run into the. It's going to give us 5 and 5 and we should be able to get a 5.5 inch long, which is about a 6.5 inch, 6.5 ounce, 6 5/8 ounce tank. But we do have to spread the mounts just a little bit because our tanks are just a little bit wider. And that's, as soon as I get this trimmed off, that's the next step. Now we really don't need to open this up a lot. In fact, I think a 32nd on each edge would be fine. But it's just cutting it too close, because what I don't want to have happen is these tanks are really between 2 1/16, 2 1/8, depending on how much you radius off the corners. I don't like to radius the corners too much because the tanks get thin. So if I look at this one, just as an example, this one would fit in. This one would miss by a good 32nd of an inch, maybe a 16th. And also where we're safety wired, the tubes are safety wired as well as that EPON resin. So we may as well quit fooling around. I know that's going to have to happen, but we'll have plenty of length. So I can't imagine that the 61 is going to need a bigger than a 6.5 ounce tank or whatever, 5 3/4. But that's the kind of thing you never do know until you build a plane or until you do this part. Where's that tank? Because what I'll have to do is I'll have to put the tubes in a little different spot. So usually what happens, it hits the header, the tube, something hits something. We're almost guaranteed going to have to make some kind of special fancy tank for this, some kind of concoction of a tank. But that's the least of it. That's not even an issue right now, because we will have the length, and this, by having this piece the way it is, I don't need that former where a plane with a wing needs the former there at the high point of the wing. You're not going to break this crutch, I don't think, not when you count the fact that the tube is going to act as a former. Now I'm going to go with just making this just even wider than it has to be. I'm just really paranoid about, and I've done it before, that's why I'm paranoid. You get to a point where you want to put the tank in and it doesn't fit in the way you think and the way it should, and it's annoying, to say the least. So this covers me in that event. Famous last words. And I've done this before on, we had to do it, if I remember right, on one of Rich's planes that he ran into an issue when we made the crutch. And Rich is just starting his new plane. Actually, he's going to start it today because he needs to come over and get the pads and the screws, so he's ready to start going. And I expect with Melinda's going to be home from the hospital tomorrow. She had her hip replaced. I think what we're going to wind up doing is going up there, and Billy will have plenty of projects to keep him busy because he's going to be off of work for probably some amount of time while he's taking care of Melinda. But you know, this is really I could have used the wider motor mounts, but this is just the kind of thing that it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. Now I didn't do the glue up at the front because I want to pull this over. Let this dry. And then I'll do the other side, trim it. And then that part pretty much is going to be complete. This part will be complete. Now, the thing that I'm not going to be able to do today, because what's going to happen, we're running out of time here. And it's been a great work session. It's been uninterrupted up to a point. But I need to allocate time to getting my business stuff done, because tomorrow, as you can imagine, Karen picks up her new car tomorrow. This is like I don't know the equivalent thing in modeling, but that Wendy's going to get to fly his B-25 the first time or something. So she's kind of excited. Actually, I'm excited. But I wanted to get to a certain point, get some of these parts made so that the next time I actually get a work session, I'd have patterns. I have a pattern for the fuselage side. I have a pattern for the double. I have the holes trimmed. I know how this crutch is going to work and fit in here. We're actually getting to the part of the project that it gets to be exciting. Be ready to lay that out in the next couple of days. But anytime I can get one step ahead like this, or if we have a day where the phone is only rang a few times today instead of off the hook every day. So what happens, I did get a little bit ahead, and what I did earlier in the day, of course, I played Charlie Reeves's Nats Flight just to get some inspiration, just to get going on this. And what I do is just thin CA to front. It's just kicking off in my hands here. So that I have that very slight curve that we're going to put into the fuselage too. That'll hopefully keep us. I mean, we're going to find out. I mean, the plans are drawn in such a way that I have a gut feeling we're going to run into the motor mounts. But again, we'll figure out, because I never have made a plane with that big 3/8 nose ring. And that's what's fun about doing something. If every plane was the same, it's Groundhog Day. Just having something a little bit different to construct, a little bit different technique, a little bit custom engineering. It's just gotten to be, as the days go by, it's gotten to be more fun every day I'm down here working on this. Now the last part of this is going to be the final sanding. True it all up. Got the little curve in it. Just need to do the final sand out, and that one part is pretty much in the bank. Now looks like we finally got it. Finally. Anyway, next time we get a chance to work on a work session, unfortunately, we got a lot of stuff going on in our life. It's all fun stuff. It's all good stuff. Even Melinda's hip replacement is good because she's going to feel, I'm sure, like a young kid again when she gets out of there. And we're going to stop and see her tonight, of course. But tomorrow's the big day. Karen gets our car. Well, today's the day Karen's been waiting for so long, for 18 years or something or whatever. She gets her new her new car today. But while she's getting ready, and we got to check with the dealer, look at this tree is growing red leaves of all things, our red maple. While she's getting ready, I wanted to show a really good trick, because as I was sorting through my wood yesterday, I realized I had a little bit of an issue I had to deal with. This is a good tip you can use, no matter what the weather is. Look at this, only a few leaves left, and then we'll be able to do the final cleanup here, I hope. Now this morning, and this is something I guess I've been putting off for a while, but I may as well do it now. The wood that I have, and this is old wood, it's been sitting around. If you can look down it, it's got twists in it. And I thought of the new wood I just got, I thought I'd have some straighter pieces. Not really though. And what you can see is if you take even one of these out, you look down at it, it's a pretzel. But because this is really good sea grain, this is actually heavier wood, but it's better wood. So I wanted to pick, and I'm not concerned here with the two lightest pieces, because when it's sea grain, I want it to be the two straightest pieces. In fact, I had them on the top. Now why didn't I? There we go. I wanted to show a good trick. One of the tricks that can work. When you get a piece of wood, and we're going to be going out to the car dealer soon, so to get rid of that bow in the wood, relatively easy. If it's sea grain wood. A grain, maybe. Sea grain, almost always. Ordinary Windex. Now we'll be gone probably an hour, hour and a half. And then we're going to go celebrate, probably have lunch out. And we've got a lot of things to do today. And we're supposed to pick up Melinda and Billy from the hospital. So we got to coordinate a lot of little loose issues. But it won't really be a problem. Because it's a lousy day. There's no chance we're going flying. There's no chance we're going motorcycle riding. So if you take this piece of wood and just let that ammonia soak in, and what I usually do, I just wet it down, give it 5 minutes, a couple minutes anyway. I want to make up at least 2 pieces. In fact, I ought to make 3, because what I'm going to need is, I'm going to need a spine and 2 sides. I may be able to get it out of 1 piece of wood. May be able to get the 2 sides out, because this is 48 by 4 wood, but the main thing is this is sea grain wood. And for our fuselage, boy, nothing is going to be better than having sea grain wood. Now the only thing, when I look through the wood I just got and the old wood, we don't have any. We haven't had any sea grain 1/4 inch since forever, and so that's leaving me with not many choices. Anyway, even after you wet the wood down, it doesn't change shape a whole lot, but you can bend it and twist it and do what you want to do. But the trick is now to find a flat piece of the table and just put some weights on this. I just wanted to let the extra drip off, and I have a flat spot. Over by my desk, and let me show you this trick, because you can use this over and over again, and it salvages a lot of stuff you normally would have to use up on other projects. Now this is a relatively flat, nice and solid table. Now here's the whole trick to this. Did you see how I made like a checkerboard? So what'll happen when I get back from picking up the car, I'll switch. So, because what's happening underneath here, the Windex isn't drying out, it's letting it soak in. This dries, this dries, this dries, this dries. So like a checkerboard, then when I get back, I'll switch. So the checkerboard will be the opposite. Then I'll wait a half an hour, 45 minutes, because we're right underneath. We're underneath the heating vent. So the heat blows down on here, it gets rid of the Windex and the ammonia right away. Now, the nice thing is, then one side will dry. I take the pieces, turn them over, put the checkerboard back on, and I actually put a third piece here to make the spine, but I had something cut out of it already. In fact, I think the first fuselage pattern was on there. But if you use this checkerboard method on a flat table, it takes 4 cycles to do it, and it may be 20 minutes, half hour a cycle. So while we're working on other projects, we got to make Jim Southworth up his pipe today. We got to get that in the mold. We're ready to start this. As soon as I get the wood, we'll cut the sides. I got to cut the doublers, and we'll be ready to go. But of course, if you've never had, if you only get a new car every 18 years like we do, or 16 years, today's a big day, and it's raining, and Karen's ready to go. Let's go get that car. Very excited. And once we get back, we'll be ready to cut patterns. Either that or we're going to have other things to do today, but on the next work cycle, we'll get to cut some wood. Now, we also had enough time here while Karen's getting ready to get Jim's pipe laid up. Jim is building a Strega, and he wants a tuned pipe with a bend in it. Well, we have the mold with the bend in it. We'll work on that in the next couple of days. Try to get a lot of these little things. He needs some other supplies for his Strega. Get him cooking, and we hope we're going to meet him, because he's out in the California area. I hope we're going to get to meet him up close and personal at VSC. Now, the other thing that was very, very disappointing, this is the aluminum box that Rich brought over. This suitcase is 2 inches smaller than what the airlines allow as a standard suitcase. Unfortunately, the box is 4 inches too long to make the specs that they send from Continental Airlines. So it's given me a couple of choices that I have to make. I either have to find some way of, in writing, getting them to allow me to take this box. And again, the problem I don't like about the box is it looks like a box. I like that looks stealth. This looks like let's strip search them. But I don't know. With those flowers on there, maybe that'll sneak it through. But anyway, I appreciate that Rich donated this box to the cause. I don't know if we'll be able to use it, but now what we have are 2 options. The option of using the suitcase method, the option of using, and I thought I could cut one edge off of this box and possibly, I'm not sure, fiberglass over it and paint it black so it won't look more like a suitcase. But anyway, all that aside, that didn't work out, but one thing is working out is Karen is up there straining at the bit to go pick this car up. And that's our priority today, to get that done. So what we're going to find out is if it's good luck that it rains the day you pick up your new car. We're going to find this out the hard way. I don't know. I hate to see this car go, baby. There's still mileage left. Could squeeze out another year. Oh, where's your car? Where's the car? Where's the car? This is yours right here, I'll bet you any money. Look at, there's 10 of them. Look at this. They're having babies. There's an awful lot of these things around here. I don't know. Well, I'm gonna park in the back. I don't want to scratch the Escort.
to set the rubber mats in there. You can leave it, all right? Have a seat, adjust the seat where you want it. Okay. So this key fits here. With this, you can,
That's great.
the other key will not fit here.
This key will not.
This key.
Buzz if you've left the lights on?
Yes, yes. Well, if you here, it will the beep.
That's what I wanna hear.
Reminds you that the lights are on.
Okay. He knows what to do.
Okay. So
He
set
knows
up the
what to
speed
do.
only. You press it here. If you want to go 50 miles an hour until you get 50.
You have a carbon fiber dashboard. How nice. Whoa, carbon fiber dashboard. What a lucky girl. Why didn't I think of that?
I can't believe Wendy.
So she's already driven a half a mile. She's a Volkswagen expert. Don't get the car dirty. It's raining.
The lower back.
You like the way it drives?
The lower back is so comfortable.
Good.
I could see taking this car for a long trip.
Yeah, we could go to Brodex in this car.
Yeah, we could.
By the way, this car has an enormous trunk. We're going to find out if a stunt ship fits in the back as soon as we get home. Home again, jiggity jig. I feel like a mobster with these two black cars. The mobster of Rutherford. We are going to see if a plane fits in there. You can't figure out how to open the trunk.
Trunk did not
Come on, baby. Come on.
Oh, trunk. You told me to hold it down. I forgot.
I have a feeling, well,
Oh, it's locked already. Okay.
I have a feeling a stunt ship's going to fit right in there. We'll find out. So it's been a couple hours. We're back, and I wanted to see if we're making any progress on this balsa wood thing. The wood's drying up. Now what I do is just reverse switch these. So we're, and even if you forget where they go, it doesn't matter because you can rub your hand. Part of the wood is dry, part of the wood is wet, and we'll just reverse it. But usually you can see right away if you're making any progress, and I want to. This is kind of a significant thing to get this wood straight. Wow, it's a ton different than it was before, and it's not even dry yet. But see, can you see the wet spots, the dry spots? So until we're going to go a shot. Well, I don't need to go. Karen's going to. So I can see this is dry. Now I can put those blocks right over the dry spots, and there's a wet spot. You can see this right here. So it's pretty simple right now. We just reverse all the blocks. And of course everybody has tons of these. If you don't have these, you can use anything flat. Just go right over the dry spots. And pretty much when I'm done with this, then I'll flip it over, get the back, and tomorrow this will be ready to cut. And that is just one good way. Now again, the thing that it works real well on C grain wood, on A grain and B grain. Sometimes it works, sometimes, but it never makes it worse. Now, as you can imagine, we got a little bit of time here. What we're doing, we're waiting for them to release Melinda from the hospital, and then we'll go pick her up, of course. But as I got a little time here, I'll cut out some big job parts. I can cut out the doublers, but this is a little trickier while we're waiting for those fuselage sides to dry up. A little trickier than normally it would be because we need to locate, and we need to locate it in the doublers more than anything else. I need to make sure I can fit this doubler on here. And I mean, this is part of the whole thing, is to get all these things lined up, and I need to line up those points where I'm going to be using that constantly changing drill. Now what I did is I tried to overlay one over the other until I have exactly the dots right in the right spot. And this would give us, let's hope it gives us, we'll find out. again, even though we're doing it this way, we need to make a mirror image. Its most important thing is that once we cut the one doubler, that doubler then traces onto the second one and they're mirror images. So the one thing you would not want to do right now is trace two doublers out, because they're not going to be the same. It's easier. It's just like putting those first bolts in. If you want two bolt holes to line up, you drill one bolt, one set of bolt holes, put the bolt in, and then use the second one, so one acts as a jig to drill a second one. Well, that's pretty much what we're trying to do here before we go to lay this out. So this is basically how I located these points. Now I want to get the center line on here also, but the first thing I want to do, again, the sequence is I always make a pattern and I'll save the pattern for whatever reason. This will be an important thing to me to have as a reference point. I don't really need to know where this is, but I'll probably trace it on the final parts. When I'm done, it'll look like this. But the next thing I need to do, I want to cut this out, because the sequence is always to make one part, and from that part make the twin. Then they're mirror images, and that's a very important concept to have when you want to make things symmetrical. Now, in getting each one of these, the most important thing right now is to get nice parallel edges and straight lines relative to what we want to have is a center line for the wing, a thrust line, and a line on the top of the fuselage that we can line up the stab and elevators with, and not have them vary by anything really. Anyway, it's such a big day for Karen, and she's out doing some errands with her new car. And one of the things I always try to tell people is, even though we only have maybe an hour, a lot of people, I only have an hour, I can't start anything. Well, one of the skills I developed over the years that I've used for my own personal use is I'm able to just stop into the shop, cut a few parts, or always, in the case of a project like this, prefab up the parts. So when we do get a real work session, another day that we're going to spend a lot of time in the shop, the whole idea is we've got stuff prefabbed up. We're ready to go. Now, in the past, I would always try to make, in fact, many times when I made doublers, I'd try to just tack glue two pieces together, drill the holes, drew them, whatever. But the better way by far is always to make one piece, and from that piece, make the second piece. In fact, that's, especially with these lineup holes, that's the biggest thing. I want to make sure I have those lineup holes, that when I hold these two doublers together, when I make the other one, that I have a perfect shot down in. I don't want to have anything off on an angle, even the slightest little amount. Now, here's the thing. When I hold this piece in, I can see all three of these right on center. So I know I've gotten my first transposition. This is done. Now I just need to get the Dremel bit, get that piece out, which is the easiest way. Then I'll have my what'll be the number one doubler, and then I need to just replicate this whole thing and do it over again. Now, one of the things I want to do is put a nice smooth finish on this part. This will actually be a part we use on the model, not a pattern. So I want to get any rough edges off of it, just the way I traditionally like to work. I'm not sure it serves any real purpose, but I always like to think that that old poem that when I was a kid we used to have hanging in my house, and it said, "The gods see everywhere." I don't know the whole poem even, but that's the one punchline. That's the line that matters. But I always thought, well, it's just nicer working with stuff that's finished nicely. Now I'm going to hand finish this part by hand, and then what I'm going to do is basically just repeat everything, trace it out, maybe even get the second part done here. Another thing, Danny Banjock has always, anytime Danny and I have conversed on the phone or talked about a modeling project, he always I always ask him, how you coming with that project or this project or whatever? And he says, I'm a little behind. He says, and whenever I try to rush, I don't enjoy it. Well, you know what? It's the same thing. And the nice thing about this big job project is it's brought back so many good memories of, I don't know, working with traditional construction and just trying to engineer up these take-apart things. And boy, I hope that aluminum box works out. I was trying to see if the L-lines give you any kind of, see, it's only over by 4 inches. And I'm thinking I could just cut the one end off. But I was hoping to make this thing look like a suitcase. That was my whole thing. And then there's of course, the worst thing, the worst scenario is I just have to ship it by Greyhound bus and hope they don't step on it or whatever. Okay, now the rest of this is pretty simple. I'm just going to repeat all of these steps. I'll wind up with a pattern and 2 exact doublers, and that's probably going to be the limit of what we can do today. And that's the logical progression of the parts. Now what's also a side benefit of this is we have the original pattern of the airfoil and our original part. If anybody else is going to try to build right off the videos or copy our system, use our system. Tom Morris has told me that he sold quite a few of these take-apart things, so, well, I guess everybody that is doing it is going to do it just a little bit different way. But we managed to use up some spare time today that otherwise we would have been not getting much accomplished. And it's like we put a one little amount of time here. Now the next time we get it, I'm looking forward to it already. See if that wood is going to dry out and straighten out a little bit, and then we'll be able to do the fuselage sides. Now our friends Javier and Susana from Spain, they sent us a little disc with some of their pictures, and I think you'll enjoy sharing this. Now, some of those photos that we just saw, some of them are of Susanna and Javier's house in Spain, and I think the rest of them, see, because I'm reading off this little note, are of a contest they went to. These are the photos, of course, of the house. They went to a contest in Cuba, and some of those planes I had never seen before, so very nice, and thank you very much. Appreciated that. And I always think that's what makes DVDs, videos and computers and cell phones very special, is the friends we can make worldwide. Oh, she's so happy with her new car. Too bad the taillights don't work. Anyway, we're going to run up, use this car to bring Melinda back from the hospital. She's done amazingly well. We are all impressed. 2.5 days after hip surgery, she's walking around, hip replacement. Nothing more a rainy day, more depressing than a hospital waiting room on a rainy day. Anyway, Melinda's coming down. We got to get her back to her house, get her up 10 flights of stairs, put her on a roof. I'm not sure what's going on here, but we're ready. Making problems for everybody? Okay, I'll take that.
No, that's front. Where am I sitting, Wendy?
Front seat.
Where's
Front
it going?
seat.
Front or back?
Front. I got this. Let me make sure the seat's all the way back.
Yeah, let me have the stuff.
Okay.
Wait.
You tell me what I got to do here.
Well, you tell me what we got.
All right, watch out, watch yourself.
Yep.
Okay.
How do you want to do this, hon?
Well, first
You want to
of all,
hang on or?
First we get those out of the way.
Okay.
Give me 2 seconds.
Well, take your time.
You can have 5 seconds.
We have 10
All
minutes.
right, I'm good. Exactly.
Okay, now let's get a seatbelt on you.
That's how we get in the car.
Let's get this. Well, Melinda's been amazing, an amazing hip replacement patient. She walked up the stairs when we got here from the hospital. Amazing. Amazing gal. So here she is in younger days.
What is that? A little bird.
Oh, how cute.
You got me a little bird.
I kept this perfect because
Let's just throw everything else.
Now this is very convenient that you're going to be working on your plane while she's recovering. I think that's priceless.
and these are my sponsors.
Go into the.
Ooh,
What is this?
wow. Windy, and windy. Richie G. Ooh, nice.
Mindy and Wendy
That's very nice.
and John D.
Did you get the new canopy on?
I didn't glue it on yet.
Okay.
This is to measure.
Billy has a little story to tell. He melted the canopy.
Yeah, don't put a heat gun in it, Dan.
Don't use a heat gun by
This
canopies.
little man here.
This is.
He looks a lot like me. Why don't you get one of those little Yamaha guys with a helmet and everything, a motocross helmet?
And now,
That's very cool. See how it looks.
it's a little too tall, but I'll have to let the guy sit in it.
I'm going to tint canopies maybe tomorrow. I bought blue canopy tint. You want to tint?
Really?
Is that a brand new one?
That's brand
I'll
new.
tint it up for you.
The thing is I had to cut it in there and it doesn't really sit flush. That's the problem.
Oh, don't glue it on yet. Let me tint it up.
I
It
want to
always looks nicer tinted.
then clear, right?
Yeah, just a little,
Like a smoke or something.
That's the same canopies on the big job, same one. A 9-inch
Is
SIG. Yeah, 9-inch SIG.
More money.
More money.
And I put the igniter thing here.
Yeah, let's see how you did that. Okay, good. That's good.
This is a
That'll work.
self-contained apartment.
And this is the kind you just take the glow plug out and the wire.
We literally planned.
Everything
Goes-
is inside.
Okay, that's good.
It's unbelievable. You have so much room
Yeah.
for everything. Yeah. Well, he.
Yeah, that's a good safety thing, no doubt about that.
Very well.
Yep.
It doesn't
yep.
even have the stuff that an ARF comes with.
Really? Yeah.
No, it looks good. Looks good.
I don't like it.
I just hope we get some flying weather. Boy, this rain, like, oh, this whole last couple days. It's horrible.
Do you have, this gets thrown out?
What else you got that I haven't seen here?
That's
Work
it.
on your racetrack any?
No, I haven't had any.
Okay, what else?
All I've been doing is just riding.
Over there. Where?
Well, and recovering here, Mrs. Recovery.
Yeah, right.
Years from now, we can look. Years from now, we can look back at this day.
She's only average.
She's only average.
She I told her what you
She can
said.
stand.
Ah.
She can stand, but she can't dance.
Merely.
Now, this is actually 3 days. That's how many hours? 72 hours?
72.
And you're up and walking and kicking footballs around, and
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Having fun. Walk
That's
up,
amazing.
Up and down the stairs.
That's average, baby.
That's average.
That's way better
I'm
than average.
What I said, you're % over average.
1%.
1% over average. Oh, you're
Over
good.
average.
1%.
I'm
I'm
impressed.
proud.
It takes a lot to impress somebody with my brain power. But and I guarantee you, with her new hip, she'll be riding her Ducati very quickly again. On today's mail, we got some pictures from Don Herdman's grandson. He's building an Oriental Plus. Always enjoy sharing the pictures with Matt. This looks like it's going to be a beauty. Now, Matt is really coming along. He really is. I'm amazed, believe me. Matt, when you see this on video, I hope you enjoy seeing it. Everybody likes to share the progress on the build of a plane. I've never met anybody that doesn't like to see a plane at various stages in the build. And I'm one of them, one of the biggest. Now, Matt set up by him, they already had such cold weather that their flying season's basically over, and he's going to start building full time. So, Matt, I hope you're going to continue to contribute on a regular basis, and we hope you enjoy the videos that we send you. I see, Matt. Here's a test. We got to get you some carbon gear here. We got to get you some carbon fiber. Anyway, it was just a heavenly beautiful day. We went out riding on the motorcycle today, and you just couldn't imagine what a beautiful day it turned out to be. Unbelievable. And this is how our day started out. Rob looked like he had a little hangover. Patch's girlfriend, Patch, and of course Karen, she made us a nice breakfast. And this is Patch's R1. This is an 01. It's an older R1, but still runs real nice, in fact. Now, Patch and I don't share the same love of pulling all the decals. In fact, I'm wondering how many decals are on that helmet. But there is something to be said for having high visibility. But Patch's R1 is all full of stripes and things like that. But we really did enjoy the ride today. And this is from the top of Bear Mountain, one of the views. And I was thinking, poor Morgan, believe me, an R1, that seat, I don't even have that on my bike because I don't ride passengers, but sitting on that seat for 3.5 hours, that's a bummer. That you got to be one tough lady. See now, my helmet is black, of course, but this is what all the young guys tend to gravitate toward. Midgley, you'd be so impressed with that helmet. Now, it's funny, I climbed up the tower to get this picture, but of course, Rob is the only one in the picture, and Patch's bike was over here, I think. Anyway, just another view from up in Bear Mountain. And it just turned out to be a heavenly day, but I know, as you can see by the trees, there are not a lot of leaves left, and what happens when we go from a day like it was 50 and 60 today to a day that it's 50 and 40 and then 40 and 20, and it can change in a hurry, but today really was a good day. We also went to this area where there's a lookout. There was there's an eagle preserve where eagles are nesting and they have a preserved area, but we really couldn't see it. The road down to the eagle, which is on an island, was closed. So we made this trek up there, but we really couldn't get out on the island. And take a guess. So look at this. This guy looks like Leslie Nielsen or something up here. Unbelievable. That gray hair. And as the afternoon wore on, it just turned out to be one of those spectacular fall days. Now see, up on the Hudson, this is up along the Hudson, there are still a few leaves on the trees, but not that many. And it was only a week ago, this whole mountain was yellow and orange and bright orange. It was just unbelievable. But poor Morgan, she really toughed it out today, sitting on the back of that seat, on that R1 back seat. That's not like riding in a Cadillac, believe me. There's a funny little side note to this. See this little young guy that over here? We were having lunch and he waddled over to where my motorcycle was. Now, when it's sitting here like this, an air-cooled bike gets red hot. The pipes are hot and everything. And his dad was making sure he didn't burn himself. And I was watching him and I said, hey, you want to sit on a bike? And so what we did, we carefully picked him up over the bike and let him sit on it. Of course, his hands came to about here. But I think that was the high point of his day, that he got to sit on my motorcycle. And the neatest thing is, Patch found this spot where all the motorcycles hang out there. There were probably 1,000 motorcycles in this little town, right along the Hudson. And what happens, the trains on their way to New York City go through there at about 100 miles an hour. The Amtrak and the Acela and all that stuff, right on the other side of that building is where the trains come through. In fact, here you can see how that train station is laid out. And they've converted it to a nice little restaurant where you can have a little lunch, sit and watch the trains go by. Mike Costello and Arnie would have had a great time up there. In the time it took us to eat, we must have seen 25, 30 trains. Anyway, it really was a nice day. We need to get back to the shop. Tomorrow is a big job day. Now today, after taking all those weights off of this wood, it looks like we've managed to make a big improvement, if not perfect. Because again, the reason I really wanted to use these pieces of wood, they're not the lightest, but they are sea grain, and I want to make the spine. And they call for 3/32 fuselage sides, not 1/8. So I wanted to have some stiffness and rigidity built in there, if possible. So later on in the day, when it comes time to work on a big job, that's going to be, we're really one big step ahead. That wood worked out really nice. And that is, by the way, that is a really nice tip. I think that works. It's worked for me many times, and the few times it doesn't work, I don't lose any sleep over it. But again, to make my point, it's always more appropriate with sea grain wood, which seems to be able to go right back to the way it was when it was a tree. And A and B grain wood, sometime it does, sometime it doesn't. The first thing I wanted to work on, and I wanted to get this out into the oven. This is Jim Southworth's Strega pipe. And what I wanted to do is very carefully, as you can imagine, we've made since 1990, when Dave started doing this, made quite a few of these. I want to get the inside good and roughed up so that when we put the canister in, the canisters are made by Dub Jet. Everything needs to be good and rough inside. And these canisters are machined from a single billet of aluminum. And we've done this many times on our tapes. And they get locked in with high temperature resin. It's a press fit, as you can imagine. Everything Dub Jet does, everything's precision. We have a piece of tube that goes up there so that when you put the hose clamp on, and these are typically lighter than any other pipes I've ever weighed whenever I've done comparisons. And these really run well with a variety of engines, and most of all with the Rojets with the stunt timing. Now this piece has to be well knurled up, or else in time it gets loose. And And we found that by doing this, it basically lasts forever. You get enough of a tooth on this, the little intake tube, not to leave it just like a prop wash. A knurl in this piece it keeps this nice and solid, gives it extra epoxy like a tooth in a thread. Now again, what makes this possible is over the years, having made so many of these, that we've found a lot of little things that could tentatively, like the threading, be an issue, and we've been able to make them. I think each series, or each time I get a bunch of these little cans from Dub, I think they just get, and Richard Oliver of course, I think they just get a little bit better. Plus, over the years we've used 3 different resins, and this is by far the best of the resins. The original pipes that used to be made, the resin was only good for up to 350 degrees. The new resin is good for up to 500. And if you have a 500 degree run, which unfortunately Bill Rutherford did have one, you can, I mean, if you take a blowtorch, you can melt one of these. But in normal use, they're pretty much a forever thing. In fact, the one Rich has in his original Stuka, I think, is now going on 6 years, and I don't think many people fly. Well, if you fly every day, you can't fly much more than every day, so I don't know. But anyway, we have really put a lot of effort into developing a reliable piece. And what I wanted to do before I get to working on the big job today, see, what I like to do is get all my carbon fiber work in the oven first thing in the morning. The idea of that is then it has to sit out there for 2 hours, and while it's sitting out there, and I could be working on a big job. Now, one of the things for today would be I want to cut out the fuse sides if I can get the time and the phone doesn't start ringing. See how nice that thread's in there and it's locked. It's really a nice design, and this is Rich Oliver and Dub Jets. A lot of time and energy went into developing this. So when you're a guy like Jim Southworth and you just want to put this in your plane and go flying and you want it to work, or anybody that wants something reliable right off the bat, this is really a nice way to go. But again, a lot of people have put a lot of time and energy into making this happen. And I'm not really sure you could have. We've tried to over the years try to come up with ways of making these even lighter, and at some point in time it gets to be too high risk. But these are about as light as it gets once they're post cured. If somebody else has a lighter pipe, you know, like General Motors, use theirs. Now once of course that resin dries and it's out to the oven. We usually let it dry 24 hours this time of year. Shop conditions are cool. Now we're near the end of this tape, but on the next tape we got something really nice. I wanted on this model to have a dyed canopy. I'm going to do a little cockpit detail, and I wanted to show using a digital thermometer that you can pick up in Sears Roebuck for about 20 bucks. The procedure that I've used, and it's certainly not the only one, but I wanted to have, the idea was I wanted to have that canopy tinted. I thought that would add a nice little dimension to our model. I had Karen pick up some RIT dye, but the problem is we're near the end of this tape and it's going to be a long dissertation on canopies. So what I think I'll do, I'll just save that for the next tape. But this is the best way I've known to do it, but again, it's temperature sensitive, and I've melted canopies and whatnot, so I wanted to do this time with a turkey pan and a digital thermometer, and that'll be on the next tape. Hope you've enjoyed the tape, and please share it.